My mother-in-law thought I cheated because I gave birth to a girl, then went insane and assaulted me while I was 8 months pregnant. I was the first woman to give birth to a baby girl on my husband's side of the family in 100 years. My mother-in-law seethed about the birth of a girl and was convinced I cheated as she didn't believe her son could have a daughter. When I got pregnant with my second daughter, she went totally insane. During a family dinner, she screamed how I'm a disgusting cheater and she won't let me get away with it again. I cried hysterically, but thankfully my husband backed me up completely. He actually got extremely mad and started screaming back at her that she is out of line and how dare she call his daughter names. He then went on to say that we are leaving and until she comes to her senses, she will never see any of us again. She tried to say something more, but he cut her off and yelled at her, "By the way, Mom, I love that little girl more than I ever loved you," as he was shuttling us out the door. I cried and broke down, telling my husband all the little comments about the baby not being his that she and her family had said to me when he wasn't around while we drove the 2 hours home. We went no contact for a few months, and everything seemed to be going great. Then, when I was nearing my due date, we decided to be the bigger person and reach out to her and offer her a chance to make things right. She whined and whined that she missed my husband and granddaughter. We agreed to meet for dinner at their house after a few weeks for a proper talk and apology from her. We arrived, dinner was served, and we were trying to make small talk when my husband said, "Yeah, Mom, this has all been nice. But we need to talk about what happened and the things you said last time we were here. I know and you know that you owe my wife an apology." My mother-in-law then looked at my husband and said, "Yes, do you have the paternity test? I am not apologizing until I'm proven wrong and we both know I'm right. You cannot be the father, and the fact that you have now apparently made 2 girls is ridiculous." My husband exclaimed, "What the F is wrong with you?" I started to cry and went to get up to grab my things and go to the car. My mother-in-law said, "Oh no, you don't." She shot up, rounded the table and grabbed my shirt, then proceeded to scream at me, "How dare you try to run away from this? You're a cheater and you need to own up to this problem." My husband screamed at her to get her hands off of me and started to make his way toward us. She then decided that I could not be allowed to leave at any cost with her son. She slapped me across my face. My husband got in between me and his mom and started to scream at her. My husband was furious, and I was crying hysterically. He grabbed my hand, and we were making our way to the door when my mother-in-law grabbed a snow globe from a shelf and threw it directly at me. It hit me in the back of my head. I fell to my knees from the pain, and before my husband could put together what just happened, she was grabbing anything she could find to throw in my direction. I was on my knees on the ground, holding my head with one hand and my belly with the other. My husband was screaming at the top of his lungs for her to stop, and she proceeded to try to get close enough to kick me. Thankfully, she is old and in bad health, so she lost momentum quickly. As a last resort, my husband pushed his mom, and she fell back into a shelf by the front door, and he rushed me out. He drove me to the hospital, and I ended up getting 6 stitches in my head and being monitored in the hospital for 4 days. The baby ended up being fine, and the hospital demanded we file a police report. We found out that when my husband pushed his mom into the shelf, she ended up breaking 2 fingers and is claiming the excessive force hurt her neck very badly. The cops showed up, took our side of the story, and compared our own report that we filed once at the hospital. They told us that my mother-in-law is demanding to press charges against my husband for assault while we are pressing charges against her. So then my husband got arrested, but was quickly released after my father-in-law was forced to tell the truth, and my mother-in-law then got arrested. My father-in-law is now begging us to drop the charges as no one was hurt, and that we are being cruel to lock up an elderly woman. We are currently at home, waiting for baby number 2 to arrive. I am on a strict bed rest order, and my husband has taken the week off of work to help pamper me and take care of our first daughter. I asked my husband if once baby number 2 arrives, we could get paternity tests for both girls to send to his mom in jail as a huge foo. He thinks it's a hilarious idea and thinks we should also make copies and send them to all the relatives who were entertaining his mom's craziness, along with a written letter saying goodbye. That none of them will ever see us or his daughters again, and that he hopes they're all happy knowing that they've ruined any chance they had to have a relationship with him or our children ever again. Update. Over the next few days, my husband got more and more depressed. He started trying to get me to entertain the idea of minimizing my mother-in-law's actions and chalking up her behavior to old age. I told him that she would need a full screening for her mental health when we go to court, and that while, yes, she's old, she doesn't get to assault me and accuse me of horrible things and use her age as an excuse. A few days went by, and I was nearing my induction day because the baby girl wasn't making her entrance. I found out that my husband had been talking with his father and mother behind my back. We got in a big fight, and he told me that he still wanted his mom to meet her granddaughter and that we could put this aside until the baby is here. Then afterwards, once she's gotten to meet her, we could resume the legal issues. I cried at this point as I thought he was supporting me through this, but in reality, he caved in less than 4 days to his mom. I reminded him that we had put in for a restraining order and no contact order, and that he had now broken it by contacting them. His response was, "Well, the no contact order is issued to you, not me, and the restraining order hasn't been approved yet. So mother-in-law can come meet baby girl too before we get approved without breaking any rules." All I could do was shake my head and cry. I put my foot down and said absolutely not and couldn't believe he'd let his mom around me or the baby after she could have killed one of us. He said that I was overreacting as the baby was not injured and she wasn't actually trying to hurt the baby, just me. She thumped my pregnant belly after she threw a snow globe at my head. We got in a huge fight about me not forgiving her and holding grudges and being unreasonable, and eventually he just left. He then went to his mom's house a few hours away. He called me sobbing and told me that if I could see his mom right now, I'd understand. Apparently, when he pushed her while she was hurting me, he indeed broke 2 of her fingers and she sprained her neck when she fell back into the shelving unit. She's laid up on a sofa in her living room, can't walk, and is in a severe depression. I should feel awful according to him. The least I could do is let her meet her new grandchild and then figure out where to go from there. I was so infuriated at this point because not only had he retreated to his mom's house, he left me alone with our oldest daughter, who is 2, while I'm supposed to be on bed rest because my baby is due. He didn't come home for the next 4 days until I was supposed to check into the hospital for my scheduled induction. My sister came to watch my oldest daughter, and my husband took me to the hospital for the induction. He mostly sat in the room on his tablet, as I was admittedly pretty cold and grumpy with him still, and wasn't acknowledging him very much. Mid-labor, my husband asked, "When can we do a paternity test?" I stopped mid-push, looked at my husband and screamed, "What the F?" The nurse was silent, looking back and forth between me and my husband. The doctor then looked at my husband and said, "Sir, we are here to deliver and take care of babies. If you have other personal relationship issues, you need to figure that out afterwards. We focus on the baby and mom. This is not the place to ask questions like that." I immediately started crying hysterically and babbling stuff like, "It's not like that. It's his baby. His mom is psycho," and stuff. I was so mortified at the thought that these nurses and doctors now think there's a chance my baby isn't my husband's and there's no way I can explain the situation to them. I immediately felt judged by the nurse and couldn't help but feel like I had been robbed of a beautiful moment. After the baby came out, I just held her and she was beautiful and perfect, but I was so distraught I couldn't look at my husband. I hate to admit this, but I wouldn't let him hold her. He left, and when he came back about an hour later, he said that his mom wanted pictures of the baby and he got his phone. I smacked it out of his hand. He got angry and left. My sister had to pick us up from the hospital and took us home. 2 days later, in my state, you have to take the baby back in for tests and a checkup to make sure the baby is maintaining weight and that there are no obvious signs of neglect. So we took her in for the check and then went to a clinic to do the paternity test the same day. The next few days at home were awful. I couldn't even look at him, and he avoided being around me or the baby for days. He barely even looked at her and was practically ignoring our oldest daughter. We got in a fight because I was trying to feed the baby, and my oldest daughter was crying because Netflix wasn't working. I started crying because I was so overwhelmed, and he just looked at our daughter and said, "Mommy didn't pay the Netflix bill because she's mad at Grandma." I yelled at him not to say crap like that to a child. He said he just thought I didn't pay it because his mom uses our account at her house. I had just forgotten to pay it. It had nothing to do with that. He made several comments to our daughter over the next few days like, "Daddy's going to go see Grandma. You can't come because Mommy hates Grandma," then left me with a hysterical 2-year-old and a newborn. I'm not going to lie, I know that I'm dealing with crazy hormones and this is a horrible patch, but I seriously considered telling him I wanted a divorce right then and there. We got the results for the paternity test 3 days later, and he's the father. He cried and told me he never doubted it and that he knew he was the dad. I told him that we would do a second test on our oldest daughter and that I was going to start packing our stuff and move in with my sister. He bawled and said he didn't need one for our oldest daughter. I demanded we take one as I would want it as proof for court whenever we get to have my case heard. I told him that I never cheated on anyone in my life, including him, and how much it hurt me that he said that in the hospital room and made the nurses and doctors think he doubted our daughter at all. He tried to apologize and hug me, but I pushed him away and told him he should leave while I packed up some things. My oldest daughter, my baby, and I are now staying at my sister's house. He has told me that he refuses to take the second paternity test for our oldest daughter and is going to make his mom write out a very long apology letter to me. He wants me to come home, but I just can't even look at him the same. I feel like all the love I had for him has been ripped away, and I feel so angry towards him. I'm just trying to take care of our girls, but he won't stop calling me. I told him he can see the girls anytime he wants, but he can't take them near his mom, and she is not allowed to be around them at all. Update 2. My ex-husband and I have been officially divorced now for 22 months. During this whole time, my mother-in-law has been posting statuses on Facebook about how happy she is that her son is freed from a toxic marriage and about how sad she is because I am keeping her grandchildren away from her. My husband has been with his new girlfriend for about 6 months and only sees our girls once every week or so. After we divorced, I got really close with a long-term friend from college. He told me that he always had feelings for me, but we were always in relationships with other people, so the timing never worked out. Well, fast forward, and we've been dating for 16 months, engaged for 4 months. He proposed on our 1-year anniversary. He's known my girls their whole lives. It's been a long time since I've been this happy. Well, I am 16 weeks pregnant, and we just found out that we are having a baby boy. I haven't told my ex-husband yet, and I just kind of figured he'd get the idea when I'm visibly pregnant. We will start telling the girls in the next few weeks. I know I obviously have to address the situation with my ex. I know he's going to ask if we are having a girl or boy, and I am unprepared for how he will react about the baby being a boy, or, more realistically, how to navigate the situation when he does eventually find out the baby is a boy. I guarantee his reaction will be bad. I just don't know if it's better to announce that we are having a boy now or after he's born. My sister says to not tell anyone the gender and say we are waiting till birth to be surprised. But all my mom friends are saying to announce it now so he has a few months to process his feelings about our daughter's new sibling.
Ex-husband's perspective. 2 years ago, my ex-wife and I welcomed our second daughter into the world. My mom put thoughts into my head about the paternity of my girls shortly before her birth. In my family, only boys had been born on my side for several generations. I thought my parents and my now ex-wife got along well, but it all exploded when we were expecting our second daughter. My wife went from being close with my mom to suddenly not speaking to her. My mom insisted that my wife was trying to take my daughters away from me. My mom said it was out of jealousy and that she thought my ex was going to try and keep the girls away from her after the new baby came. My ex did not want my mom at the hospital when our second daughter was born and said it was too crowded already with my parents and her sister there. My mom got in a huge argument with my wife and pushed her. My wife shoved her back harder, and my mom fell into a shelf, breaking 2 fingers and spraining her neck. My ex-wife filed for a restraining order and got full custody of our girls. I regret listening to my mom and doubting my ex-wife's faithfulness. I feel like I was manipulated into believing lies. I haven't been the best dad or partner, and I regret not being there for my girls more. My ex-wife is now happily engaged, and I know I need to accept that. I wish I could fix things, but I know I have to focus on being a better father and moving on.